everybody. I'm Ryan from Fireside Yankees here with Aiden. And look, the Yamamoto sweepstakes, I know Alex and I talked about this morning, obviously came to a conclusion. The Dodgers signed Yoshinobu Yamamoto to a 12-year, $325 million deal. That's not including the posting fee. Also given the $50 million signing bonus. It was a very, very, very pretty penny that they paid to land him, but that was what it was expected, right? You know, I did also say, on that podcast in the morning, like, look, if you told me in October the Yankees made a $300 million offer for Yoshinobu Yamamoto, I would have told you, oh, okay, so he's a New York Yankee. And the bidding, it just got really high, and the Yankees, I don't think it's a matter of the Yankees are willing to go $25 million more, or, which would have been what? I think like $2 million extra in terms of the AAV. I think the issue with the Yankees was just that they knew that if they matched the Dodgers offer, they still weren't going to land him, right? Like, I don't think they were under the impression that he was going to pick the Yankees over the Dodgers. And, in terms of allure and all of those things, the only team that really had that kind of pull in comparison to the Yankees was the Dodgers. This entire time, it was really only the Dodgers that you felt had that kind of advantage. And it proved to be the case here. Yamamoto, of course, grew up a Dodger fan. The Dodgers, of course, adding Shohei Ohtani certainly definitely helped in that regard. But ultimately, the Yankees don't come away with Yamamoto. Now, where do they go from here? Is this offseason failure? There's a lot of questions that are going to be flying around, regarding what the Yankees should do, what the offseason outlook is. And we're going to try to look at the three big trade candidates that are probably going to get moved this winter, that being Dylan Cease, Corbin Burnes, and Shane Bieber. Now, I'm saying that they're probably going to get moved, but, maybe one of them gets hung on to. Maybe, like, Corbin Burnes sticks with the Brewers, and maybe the White Sox don't find anything they're looking for with Cease. I doubt that Bieber's on the Cleveland Guardians roster to open the year next year, but, let's get started with Bieber, because I think Bieber's the one that, like, he's the one with the lowest, like, he's definitely got the lowest total value on the market. He's going to cost the least to get. He's the least expensive one. I think he has the highest arbitration hit, the second highest arbitration hit, but in terms of prospect capital, he's not going to take a lot to get. 3.80 ERA over 128 innings this past season. 1 year left in his deal. Won the Cy Young in 2020. Was, consistently one of the 4 or 5 best pitchers in the American League from 2019 to 2022. But then he took a step back this past season, had some elbow inflammation issues. He's at Driveline working in the offseason, but Aiden, how comfortable do you feel trading for Shane Bieber? What would you offer for Shane Bieber? And, not saying that what you would offer in the sense of to get a deal done, but more so what your top offer would be for him. And, yeah, like, what would your confidence meter be if the Yankees got him, and where would you slide him in the rotation?
Well, Ryan, as far as, these are fallback options. These are fallback options for Yamamoto. We thought we were going to be getting a 25-year-old ace, but now we're, what's the next best thing? And because of how, the pitching market on the free agent market is, it's gotten a little thin, and then there's really only so many trade options out there. I don't think I really want Blake Snell or Montgomery on this team. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. But Shane Bieber, of these 3 trade options that, I could see the Yankees making and probably make a lot of sense, I feel like Shane Bieber is he's the low risk, high reward guy, but at the same time, I do feel like it is a bit of a risk taking a chance on him because he's been all over the place a little bit. Like, yeah, he's had those great years. He had that Cy Young year in 2020. He was great in 2022, and that's not to say he was bad last year. Like his SIRA wasn't great. His FIP, I guess it could have been better, but he's just not, he's still getting ground balls. He's just getting, they're hitting the ball too hard off of him. And that's not something I like, especially in a hitter's park. Or, I don't even know if you can consider Yankee Stadium a hitting park. But, here's the thing, though. There's upside there. There's a ton of upside on Shane Bieber. And he'd be working with his former pitching coach in Matt Blake. And I feel like Matt Blake could tap a lot of that upside into him as a player. Like, I feel like we could get a lot out of him because of his past history with Blake, and a new change of scenery could definitely help him. But I really do like this option just because of what it means cost wise. Because listen, the Yankees gave up however many 5 pitchers or 4 or 5 pitchers in the Soto deal, and the last thing they want to do right now is give up more of that pitching depth, because pitching is basically a need right now. our rotation is looking a little thin. It's never a good thing when you see Clayton Beeter as your fifth starter on roster resource for next year. That's not what you want. I don't think Clayton Beeter is really going to be a starting pitcher at the big league level. But, Shane Bieber, he's not going to take a lot because he only has 1 year of control left, because he hasn't been as good as he's been in the past, and because of, his injury risk. This takes maybe one top 30 prospect, maybe not even. It takes one top 30 prospect and maybe, a couple flyers in there. But I just don't. I would like this move. I would like a Shane Bieber move, just because cost-wise, it's low risk, high reward. But he's definitely not the prettiest option on the table in the trade market.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I'll say in terms of what I think of, what I think of Shane Bieber and what I think of his profile. It's not like, everybody talked about the velocity decrease. That occurred between 2021 and 2022. And then in 2022, 5 B WAR, 4.8 F WAR, 2.88 ERA, dominated in the postseason as well. If you guys remember, that Game 2 start against the Yankees was brilliant in that outing, was brilliant in his wild card outing against the Rays. Now, people could say maybe, hey, those weren't great offenses, but, the whole criticism is that he can only pitch against AL Central teams. He did take down 2 AL East teams, so that is something to take of note here. But the big thing for me that doesn't really make sense is, if you look at his 4 main pitches, his fastball, cutter, slider, curveball, right? In 2022, in terms of run value, his 2 worst pitches, and I'm saying worst with the cutter, but it was a good pitch last year. It just wasn't as much this year. His 4-seamer and his cutter were his worst whiff pitches, were his worst pitches according to weighted on base average, were his worst pitches according to average exit velocity against, I believe, were his worst pitches according to xWOBA. Just every metric across the board, run value, everything. And those are the 2 pitches he increased usage in. He dropped his slider usage, his best pitch last year, by roughly 9%. He dropped his curveball usage, which, his curveball is an excellent pitch for him as well, by about 4%. So, I'm not going to lie, man. I don't really know what he was doing. I don't know what he was doing on the mound. I don't know what the pitching coaches over there were telling him. I have no idea why he made that shift. I have no idea why he thought that shift would be a good idea. I really don't. Right? I don't know why he chased fewer whiffs. And as a result, he also got hit a lot harder. Not just a little bit, a lot harder. In 2022, he was able to prevent quality of contact damage a lot. He had a 369 xWOBA, by far the best of his career. Even better than the years when in 2020 he won the Cy Young. And in 2019, he was a top 5 finisher for the Cy Young. And in 2021, when healthy, he was still very good. In 2022, it was his best year in terms of quality of contact prevention. And then he shifts away from that. He goes back to more fastball usage. It just didn't make sense to me. Matt Blake is somebody he credits for his breakout in 2019. That was the guy who kind of pushed him to throw more curveballs. I think that that's a situation you would end up with here. And the big question for me, it's not a matter of is Shane Bieber going to be good enough? It's is he going to be healthy enough? I think health is the biggest question we all have at this point. He had some elbow inflammation. He was able to return and looked good. But anytime we're talking about acquiring a pitcher, who has lost some velocity, and acquiring a pitcher, who has a lot of innings under their notch or under their belt, we're talking about a guy you're going to be a little bit concerned about what they can give you in 2024 in terms of innings. But as you mentioned, not going to cost much. I believe that on Locked On Guardians, it was reported that Bieber's was like the return is seen more like, oh, he'll be a salary dump. You know what I mean? And I like hearing that because that tells me that it's not going to cost a lot. As you mentioned, maybe I'll say one top 15 guy, like not even top 15. Yeah, I'll say one top 15 guy. I'll say it's a similar package to the one that Verdugo was traded for. So, I'll say like maybe it's a Brock Selvage and maybe like another arm or Brock Selvage and like, maybe an outfield like Jay Savina, the guy we got from the Brewers in that Jake Bauers deal. He's, somewhere in that top 30 to 35 range. Maybe he's involved in that deal. But yeah, I really don't see the Yankees trading a King's ransom for Bieber, and it doesn't prevent you from doing something else. Let's say, we'll talk about this right now, actually, Dylan Cease, right? Like, let's say Dylan Cease's trade market drops a little bit, right? Or maybe they're willing to take on less prospects if the Yankees were to, eat like Yoan Moncada's contract, which they can do that now because they didn't pay Yamamoto. And I'm not saying that let's go, we didn't pay Yamamoto, now we can eat Yoan Moncada's contract, not throwing up, fists and cheering about it. But you don't have that $30 million, so you can actually consider doing it. There is a lane that's opened up for you, I guess, on the trade market. I'm using this heavy quotation marks. It is definitely a worse option than getting Yamamoto. I would rather just straight up pay money than trade prospects. But if you trade for Shane Bieber, it's not like you're trading out of that pool of prospects that would preclude you from trading from any of the other 2 guys on this list. And shifting gears a little bit here to Dylan Cease, Dylan Cease is an interesting pitcher. You're going to be paying for the Cy Young year he had, or the year where he was almost the winner of the AL Cy Young in 2022. But I doubt that that's the pitcher he's going to be going forward. He lost a tick of velocity, this past season. The implementation of the pitch clock and him losing velocity and that happening between 2022 and 2023 certainly would lead you to believe that the pitch clock is why that happened. His slider got significantly worse. His stuff plus went from 124 to 115. Fun fact, Shane Bieber had the opposite effect. He actually had his stuff plus go up a little bit. His breaking balls got better, 98 to 100 in terms of overall stuff plus. So we're talking about a guy who actually took a huge hit to their arsenal. It wasn't really Shane Bieber. It was Dylan Cease, right? Now, he was still, an effective pitcher in terms of making 30 starts this year. That's great, but he doesn't pitch deep enough into games for the innings to be closer to 200, right? This is more of a 160 to 170 to a maybe 180 inning guy. There are a lot of questions. The questions are plentiful, but, Aiden, it doesn't take much to realize why he can be good, and that's the stuff. So run me through what you would give for Dylan Cease, what type of pitcher you view him as. I personally think he's like a top 20 guy. What do you view Dylan Cease as relative to other stars in the league? What are you giving up for him? All that stuff.
Yeah, Dylan Cease is a really, really interesting option on this market, and I'm a little shocked that, he's someone that we're talking about, because he's just someone that I didn't think would be available heading into this offseason, but, the White Sox are the White Sox. It's a really dire situation over there in the south side of Chicago, but yeah, he definitely dropped off in the past season. It doesn't really seem like he has that secondary pitch anymore. Like, his secondary pitch used to be his slider, and it looks like his usage dropped a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, and the quality just wasn't there. The good thing about him is his fastball velo. It dropped down a tick, but it's still there. It's still a 96 mile per hour fastball. It's above league average, which that's something you want out of a pitcher. That's what you want in the modern game of baseball. He's still getting whiffs. He's still getting his strikeouts. But like you said, he's not really getting too deep into games. And he went from having a Cy Young season in 2022 to having a pretty mediocre 2023. But like you said, you're going to be paying for that Cy Young year, and you're paying for that Cy Young year because there's I think there's 2 more years of control on him, which is, that's something you want. You want a young, controllable pitcher. He's only 27 years old. He'll be hitting free agency at age 29. Yankees, if they got him, they would, be able to negotiate him with him more. But, what does it take to get him? Like we said, you're paying for that Cy Young season. I read earlier today that John Heyman was on some kind of show, and he said it's going to take 4 top prospects, which is not something I want to do right now. I'm sure it's not something Brian Cashman and co. wants to do right now. If that price drops, then sure. But, you're giving up a Chase Hampton, you're giving up a Will Warren or a Luis Heel, definitely some position. Spencer Jones, absolutely on the table if you're trading for Dylan Cease. So, it's going to take a bit of a ransom for Cease, and while I do like him, I think he would fit well with the Yankees. I would love to see what Matt Blake could do with him in the Yankees pitching lab, but it's not really an option I'm too interested in, just because of the price implications, and the Yankees really aren't in the business of giving up any more prospects right now after the Juan Soto trade.
Yeah, look, and I'm not going to sit here and lie. I know that people are going to, say, hey, you're being awfully picky, right? Yeah, we are, because Dylan Cease is going to cost, the White Sox are going to ask Brian Cashman in the first call they have. So we expect Jason Dominguez in this deal. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. That's the first thing they're going to say. And maybe that's not what it ends up taking. Maybe the Yankees negotiate a little bit down, but I'm not gonna dilly-dally here. They're gonna ask for that, right? They're gonna ask for him and say, we want him, we want Spencer Jones, we want Chase Hampton. As you said, 4 guys in the top 10, right? So to clarify, that means maybe Henry, maybe it's a package of Henry Lane, George Lombard Jr., Will Warren, Spencer Jones, and then another guy. That's a lot. That's a ton to give up. And if I'm giving up those type of guys, I want a legitimate ace, right? I want an ace, and I'm gonna sound so old school right now, but I don't care. Aiden, I need a guy who's getting me to the 6th and 7th inning. I don't want these 5 and dive guys are not aces. They're good pitchers. They're not aces. They're really good pitchers. They're not aces. Ace is more than just being able to put up a sub-3 ERA when you pitch. It's you being able to give me 190 innings, 200 innings, get me through a start, get me past the 6th inning, pitch effectively, all that stuff. That's what being an ace is. That's what it is to me. So it's always going to be for me. That's what it's 100%. It's got to be that. I'm not paying ace prices for a guy who can't do it. Like, I'm sorry. No disrespect to Dylan Cease. Look, and I'm sure he's not watching this, but if he were, it's not me disrespecting the guy. But when we're talking ace, I'm thinking Garrett Cole. I'm thinking of a guy who gets me 200 innings. I'm thinking of a guy who gets me a sub-3 ERA. That's what I'm thinking of. And that's my standard. My standard for an ace is going to be really high. It has to be. That's what it has to be, right? Like, that ace label is thrown out so often, right? And I'm not paying ace prices for a non-ace pitcher, right? Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just not happening. Even if you get 2 years of that pitcher, that's great. But I still have to pay him the 2 years of arbitration, and those years are not going to come cheap. It's still going to cost something. And it's one Cy Young year. Like, it's 1 year where he was an elite pitcher, right? I'm not saying it's not possible for him to do it again, or that the Yankees can't get more out of him, or that I'm going to criticize teams for chasing Dylan Cease. But what I am saying is that the Yankees are kind of, as you mentioned, they just pulled off the Soto deal. They just gutted their pitching depth. Are they in a position to do that again? Probably not. If they're not in a position to do that again, the only way I'm considering it is if it's for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I don't view Dylan Cease as that. The whole pursuit of Yamamoto wasn't a matter of the Yankees wanted to spend $300 million on a pitcher and they just had $300 million sitting around. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go out and get a guy who's 25 years old and is only going to cost money. They went out for it, and they tried. They gave him $300 million, and it just wasn't the top offer. It is what it is, right? But I'm sorry, when it comes to pitchers and investing, lots of financial or prospect capital into that, I need a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Aiden, Carlos Rodon was a, surefire, top-of-the-rotation guy, and after year 1, we're sitting here and we're talking about needing to get a number 2, right? Frankie Montas was acquired for that very same reason, and we're sitting here a year after that trade talking about needing a number 2, right? Like, the Yankees have acquired 2 guys to be the number 2 to Garrett Cole in the last 2 years. And immediately, less than a year after acquiring that player, the immediate offseason following that player's acquisition, the Yankees need to go out and find another frontline guy. Rodon's supposed to be the Montas replacement. Yamamoto's supposed to be the Rodon replacement. I'm sorry, but I'm going to be picky. I think we have reserved the right to be picky. Garrett Cole has been worth everything, and that's because he's a true ace. I just don't feel that way about Dylan Cease. And I'm pivoting here, and I'm using this to pivot to the guy on this list who I think checks that box off. Yeah, deep into games. Gonna give you a lot of innings. Elite level stuff. Elite level command. Great results. No questions about durability. That's Corbin Burnes. Corbin Burnes is 4th in innings pitched in 2021. He has a sub-3 ERA. He gets plenty of strikeouts. I know his numbers were a little bit down this year. His velocity dropped by about a tick. But here's the difference, right? Shane Bieber dropped from Cy Young contender, fringe Cy Young contender, wasn't in the top 5 in Cy Young voting, but was just pretty good, to a number 4 starter. Corbin Burnes went from, this guy's the undisputed best pitcher in baseball to, he's probably around the 10th best pitcher, 7th, 8th, 9th, somewhere in that range, which is still an ace. He threw 193 innings this past season, 3.39 ERA. That's an ace. That right there with Garrett Cole, you're winning. I mean, you're unbelievable, right? You're downright disgusting. You're downright gross. This is the only pitcher that's on the market who gives me the same impact for 2024 the Yamamoto does. That's my bar, right? That Corbin Burnes is an ace. I'll pay ace prices for it. Now, will the Yankees? I'm not sure. Will I blame them for not doing so? No, I'm not going to blame them if they don't go out and get Corbin Burnes. I'm not going to sit here and say, how do you not gut your farm again for Corbin Burnes? But what I am saying is that if the Yankees really wanted to go for it on the trade market, if they were like, we're mad that we didn't get Yamamoto, we need to angrily pivot, yeah, I would be down spending some FU prospect capital on Corbin Burnes. Aiden, I view this guy as an ace. I view this guy would come over and immediately be one of the 2 or 3 best pitchers in the American League. Where do you rank Corbin Burnes? What do you think a package would look like? Give me your rundown on Corbin Burnes.
Corbin Burnes is a perennial Cy Young candidate. This guy's got disgusting stuff. He's got great command. Like you said, he goes deep into innings, and that's what makes an ace. He checks off all of the boxes. I really want this guy. Honestly, I really want Corbin Burnes because, and that's the spoiled Yankees fan in me, that's me being angry that we didn't end up getting Yamamoto. but, he's the next best thing. If you don't get Yamamoto, Corbin Burnes is right there. And one could argue Burnes might be the better option than Yamamoto just because he's pitched in the league before. He's been there. He's done that. But Corbin Burnes is not going to be cheap. I think, yes, it's going to take a good amount of prospects, but I also think it might cost less than some people think, okay? Because he has 1 year of control left. He's going to be a free agent next season, I believe. And, he's been on foul territory. I have my friends over there at foul territory. He's been on there more than enough times. And, basically he's told them, he said that, the arbitration situation with the Brewers and him has been super ugly. That's been well documented. And they, in so many ways, they basically told him, like, hey, we like you. It's just not going to work out. Like, we don't have the resources. We don't have the funds. It's not within our budget to keep you around. So this is someone the Brewers are going to get rid of, whether that's this offseason or whether that's at the trade deadline. The Brewers are a pretty well-run organization. They're not just going to keep this guy and let him walk away. They're going to trade him for some type of prospect capital. It just depends on when. And I think, I don't know where they would get more capital because, if you're trading for him now, you're getting a full season for him. If you're trading for him at the deadline, you're not getting a full season of him. But that's when teams are desperate for pitching. Teams are always desperate for pitching every single trade deadline. And, I feel like his name was floated out a little bit this past year, but Ryan, it's going to take a couple top 10s. It's going to take a couple top 30s. I think, I think it takes like a 3-player package for Corbin Burnes, maybe 4. I think a headliner would be like Spencer Jones. You put maybe a Chase Hampton in there too. Like that's what this guy is. He's a top of the line pitcher. He's a perennial Cy Young candidate. He's always going in deep into games. And what I love about him so much, Ryan, is he has one of the best cutters this league has ever seen. And who do we know that likes cutters? Matt Blake. Matt Blake and the Yankees love cutters. So, honestly, it's a perfect fit. It's just about how much the Yankees are willing to give up and how much the Brewers are asking. And the Brewers have every reason to ask for a pretty high price for this guy. I really want him. I really do. His walk rates are there. His strikeout rates are there. His ground ball rate is there. He doesn't give up hard contact. I love him. But realistically, I don't really see it happening. But, in the next couple weeks, if we hear that there's some interest from the Yankees, then we can start, getting more excited about that. But as of right now, I sadly do not see it happening. I more see the Yankees taking some kind of reclamation project like a Shane Bieber or even if you consider Dylan Cease a reclamation project. But they're going to be taking a flyer on someone this year. I don't think they're going to go out and trade or sign an ace. Blake Snell, Montgomery, I don't think that's really on the table. But yeah, the Burnes, as far as Burnes goes, wish it would happen, but don't see it happening.
Yeah, so I agree. I don't see it happening, but I will say that if the Yankees wanted to make an offer, I think they could make an attractive one. If you're looking at what the Brewers need, a lot of it is in the infield. Yes, they could use an outfielder like anybody. They don't have a lot of good position players, but you have Chiriot and Yelich on big-time deals. You imagine like one of Garrett Mitchell or Sal Frelick will fill in for them in the outfield as well. They also have Joey Wiemer. I'm not sure how confident they are in Wiemer as a full-time outfielder, but those are 3 guys who are young and outfielders. But look at that infield. Adames looks like he won't be here next year. If they trade Burnes, you're probably dealing Adames. Bryce Terang, Andrew Monas. I'm not going to be able to pronounce the last name. I apologize, but I'm not going to be able to. Bad at last names. Jake Bowers is the first baseman, our old friend of the pod, or not of the pod, but deep down in my heart, he's my friend. I may not be his. But looking at the infield, they need help there, and I think the Yankees can provide some insurance. Now, I know Oswald Peraza is kind of like, I don't know if he's damaged goods at this point, but it's just more like, like I wouldn't be like. I think he's the type of prospect that different teams have different perspectives on him or different, I guess, price points in his value, whatever it may be. but he is a good defensive shortstop. We know that. Like, he is a good defensive shortstop. Should be able to, like, be even like a 90 WRC plus hitter with good defense and speed. You'll take that if you're the Brewers. I think you do something. This is kind of a little slimy here. I know, like, you are trading a guy you just traded for. Jorbit Vivas. He is a guy who is in the top 10 of their organization. He kind of qualifies as that, like, fringe top 10 prospect in the organization. They need infield help. Like I just mentioned, Bryce Terang and Andrew Monastart. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it. I'm not going to pronounce it. Just Andrew M. I'm sorry, Andrew. He's their third baseman. He's 26 years old and has a career 88 WRC plus in the majors, right? Like, this guy is not he's a journeyman type player. That's the type of player you have here. That's a player you can easily, improve upon, with a guy like, Vivas, right? And then I think you throw in Ben Rice and a pitcher. Now, I know Ben Rice, obviously, like, really good player in this organization offensively, but I don't think I'm going to lose sleep over losing Ben Rice if I'm getting Corbin Burnes. You slot him in at first base. That would help them a lot. Like, that infield now gets a lot better for the future and for the present. And then maybe throw a pitcher like Clark Schmidt in there. I know you're giving up Clark Schmidt, but you're getting Corbin Burnes, so, like, who really cares? Will Warren can probably fill in that role of, like, be a back-end guy. If you want to sign Montas to, like, even, like, round out your depth even more, go ahead, right? Like, now you have a really good rotation. You have Cole, Burnes, Rodon, Cortez, Montas. Like, that rocks. Your bullpen's in good shape. You probably have Will Warren and Luis Gil as, like, your swing guys. Then you have, Efros, Hamilton, Gonzalez, Loaizaga, Canley, Holmes. That's your 8 guys in your bullpen. Obviously, Marnacho can fill in at any point in time if you need to. Clayton Beater's on the 40-man roster. Joanges Gomez is on the 40-man roster. Those are, like, your 3 immediate. Like, if anybody gets hurt, those 3 guys come up. That's a good situation to be in. Aiden, I think we're talking about, like, that's a team that goes out and, like, that's a team I think that goes out and wins the World Series type beat, right? Like, that team is freaking good. That team is freaking stacked. Now, there are still questions, right? Like, again, a lot of this episode, and I want to finish on this point too, and I want to hit on it at some point. A lot of this depends on Carlos Rodon. And Sam, our guy who does all of our TikToks and everything like that, he's on some pods, doing some lives. Great, does all of that stuff. Awesome for that. He released a short today that I want people to check out. But he had talked about, like, Rodon was paid $162 million to be the pitcher we're talking about acquiring right now. That's what he was paid to be. We need him to be that, regardless of who we acquire. And look, maybe if you get Corbin Burnes, there's less pressure for that to happen. But as we alluded to just now, it's not happening most likely. Like, I'd put the odds of the Yankees getting Corbin Burnes at like 10 to 15%. And that's, I think, being a little generous, right? It's a little bit of Yankee bias in there. But end of the day, unless you're getting Corbin Burnes, even if you get a Dylan Cease, which, again, if you're not getting Burnes, you're probably not getting Cease. And even if you get a Shane Bieber and Shane Bieber bounces back or whatever, it all kind of starts and stops with Carlos Rodon. How good Carlos Rodon is kind of defines this entire team next year. If he's what he was in 2022, this team's going to win a crap ton of games. This team's going to win 100 games if he's that type of pitcher. With Garrett Cole at the top of rotation, with the amount of lottery tickets you have in the rest of your rotation, you probably fill out some spots there as well. They have what they need in terms of, like, the guys internally to at least build the foundation of a rotation. We're just looking to find, add those polishing touches to round it out and give them depth. But at the end of the day, like, Aiden, Rodon has to be better next year. Like, there's no excuses for it. Like, he has to be that guy next year. I'm tired of, like, every single time we acquire a pitcher like that, we have to go out and get a different one. I mean, look at Sonny Gray. We acquired Sonny Gray to be that guy. Then we had to pivot and find a new one in J.A. Happ. He failed to be that guy in 2019, and we didn't even find anybody else to do that at the deadline, right? So we need to, like, at some point, we need to hit on our guy. We need to hit on, the guy we're going out and making that type of financial investment for, because, I mean, let's be real here, and I know this is kind of like, I don't want to put this blame on him, because at the end of the day, it comes down to, ownership and management and everything. The reason the Yankees didn't give Yoshinobu Yamamoto $325 million or $350 million, or were less inclined to do so, is because they have Carlos Rodon on their payroll. Carlos Rodon was not on their payroll. I don't know if I'd say he would be a Yankee, but I would say that there's a chance that the Yankees would have had an edge financially. And that lies squarely on Carlos Rodon's shoulders, right? Like, that right there, like, we talked about this with Stanton. The reason Bryce Harper's not on New York Yankees because Giancarlo Stanton was traded for. You don't want that on your ledger I'm not saying that should be blamed on Rodon, but that's what fans are going to do. That's exactly what's going to happen, right? That's exactly where your brain's going to go. It's going to go to, if only we didn't sign Rodon. This entire offseason, this entire core, everything could hinge on that. I mean, if we didn't trade for Giancarlo Stanton is the biggest what if of the Baby Bomber era, by far. It's not what if, Gary Sanchez stayed productive. What if Miguel Andujar never got hurt? What if, Sonny Gray panned out? It is the one question of what if we didn't trade for Giancarlo Stanton. And at least he had a couple of really good years here. Rodon's yet to do that. So a lot of this does ride on him. And I don't mean to, I don't want to sit here and call him a bust already, but it's looking not good. So Aiden, I don't know if you have any final remarks, anything you want to add on before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. A lot of next season hinges on how well Carlos Rodon pitches and how well the kids are going to play, how well the rookies play. I mean, as it stands right now, it looks like the Yankees are going to have one or two rookies making a good amount of starts next season. So guys like Will Warren, even Luis Gil, I think he's in for a pretty big comeback if he figures out his command. Guys like that need to perform. Austin Wells, he needs to perform. Anthony Volpe needs to take that step. But, Carlos Rodon, you're getting paid a lot of money and you got to pay up to that standard. And, I think, like you said, the reason we were in the market for a guy like Yoshinobu Yamamoto wasn't just because it was super opportunistic, okay? I'll say that. Part of the reason the Yankees were so in on this guy is because it's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunity that you get a guy that's 25 years old with ace-caliber stuff, potential, on the open market like that. And because they lost out, we all feel like right now we have to go out and get an ace, when it's like, we might have an ace caliber guy in our rotation right now. He just had a bad 2023. Carlos Rodon's stuff is still there. All the movement, all the break, all the RPMs, they're still there. The guy just kind of had no idea where the ball was going when it was coming out of his hand. And that's not exactly surprising considering he was coming off of a forearm injury. When guys are coming off of arm injuries, pitchers, they're always coming off of arm injuries. Their command isn't going to 100% be there. But, if Rodon's putting in the work this offseason, if he's talking to Matt Blake, as much as he should, he's putting in the work, I feel like we could see a good season out of him. I don't think we're going to get 2022 levels where he was, kind of a Cy Young candidate. I think we get, what I'm asking from him is a sub 3.3 ERA. I'm so okay with that. You just want him to play up to his pay grade, but Ryan, we sat here and we talked about these three options on the trade market. We talked about how, we don't really have interest in signing a guy like Snell or Montgomery because it sounds like the same old song again. It sounds like Carlos Rodon. It sounds like Frankie Montas. It sounds like Paxton, J.A. Happ, Sonny Gray. That's the thing. The Yankees need to start hitting on guys. And if they're not going to start hitting on guys, then these young guys in the farm, this pitching lab that they apparently have in the farm, it needs to live up to the hype. It needs to perform. We need to see results at the big league level. And I think it can, okay? As bad of starts that, Randy Vasquez and Brito did have last year, they had some really great starts too, and they showed a lot of promise out of the bullpen. And that was a product of the Yankees pitching development. And because of that, and because they found something in Michael King. They tapped into his upside and realized that he can be a quality starting pitcher. That's the reason we have the modern day Ted Williams on our team right now. So that's what we need. Honestly, our season next year is not riding on, the bottom half of our lineup. Well, yes, it's riding on the performance of Austin Wells, the step of Anthony Volpe. What I think this team is really relying on, if they really want to win a lot of games, if they want to get past 100 wins again, Carlos Rodon needs to perform at least near his pay grade, and the guys at the bottom of the rotation in Montas and the two rookies like Will Warren, whether it be Luis Gil, Clayton Bieber, or maybe if Chase Hampton's ready, those guys need to perform, and that's what takes the Yankees to the next step next year.
I 100% agree. And you mentioned James Paxton in there. James Paxton had an 83 ERA minus for the Yankees in 2019. He might be the Yankees' last real, they went out, they acquired him. Even though he wasn't, he did nothing in 2020 for the Yankees. I don't even want to even try to sugarcoat it. He was downright awful for them. He didn't really pitch. But that was the last time they got big time value from a pitching acquisition they made outside of Garrett Cole, right? It's Garrett Cole and James Paxton, right? Those are the two big ones. They have to hit on this one. They have to hit on their next one, or Rodon has to be that guy. It's that simple. I actually think Rodon and Paxton comp very similarly because, we're looking at pitchers who have injury concerns and can kind of just be very volatile year to year because of it, but the stuff is good. I'm going to bank on anybody with elite level stuff, and I think Rodon's got it. I think that there are going to be some things that Rodon can work on and improve upon. The thing I would immediately say, and I know it's going to be, I'm not saying it's not sourced or anything, I'm just guessing, the thing I would a little bit, look at is, maybe a cutter, right? Maybe a cutter would be kind of, that would be kind of sick. I'm not going to, everyone wants him to develop the changeup. Don't see it happening. I think it's a cutter. I think it's a cutter all day, every day. Give me a cut. Give me Rodon fastball slider cutter in 2024 and ride it to the sun. But look, I'm going to be a believer in Rodon for next year, but I did want to emphasize that a lot of this rides on him. But with that being said, let us know what you guys think in the comment section below. Bieber, Cease, Burnes, or maybe you got somebody else, or maybe just don't want them to add anybody. I don't know. Maybe you just think Will Warren's going to win the Cy Young, which, hey, not a bad. I'll definitely defend that take. But with that being said, let us know what you guys think in the comment section below. You guys can check us out on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course this YouTube page. I know I mentioned Sam on the TikToks. Aiden also handles a lot of our TikToks and socials as well. So make sure you guys check those out. My hands are very clean on that regard. I do not have the editing skills or prowess to handle that. But I'll just edit this podcast, snip out the beginning, snip out the end, and pump it out and call it an editing job. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and peace out, Yankee fans.